Hello and welcome to an update on the Liberty Roads game. I think the last video covered a game introduction and the first 4 turns. I've played now up until the end of turn 9, which actually is one possible breakpoints in the game. You can decide just to do Operation Cobra, which ends at the end of turn 9. So I could call the game here and see how things stand, but I know how things stand and they're not looking very good for the Allies. If you just play the Cobra game, you get a choice of it's done in secret, which is obviously a bit tough playing solitaire, but you essentially have a choice of 9 different objectives, of which you select 4, and they range from a city in Germany, which I think would be quite challenging, a major port, Antwerp, Brussels, Paris, a number of V1 rocket sites, 3 U-boat locations, and then you do a tally and you see whether or not you've got 4, 3, 2, 1 or none. One of them is a major port, so the Allies do have Cherbourg, so that's currently standing as a German minor victory. I think you'd have to be pretty inept to not get a major port in 9 turns, I have to say. But that's as far as I've got with the Allies. However, is part of the reason for that because the Germans have thrown everything at trying to contain the Allies in the peninsula around Normandy. There's quite a big German dead pile, which we'll see in a minute, and I guess if you were playing just the short game, you could sort of sacrifice the German army to win the game, but perhaps lose the war. So I was on the fence as to whether to continue this or not, but I think it's a very enjoyable experience, and a bit of effort to set it up. So it seems a shame to tear it down when the sort of jury's out as to whether the Allies are doing quite as poorly as it would appear at first glance. There was a second invasion. You had to make 2 invasions, again comparing against the Reich. It's a very similar way of trying to represent the campaign, and you can invade in the south of France, which is what I've chosen to do. Some troops on the Mediterranean front are available for that operation. It's a combined French-American operation, which was very successful. Southern France not defended particularly strongly, and again, is that because they overcommitted around Normandy. So that's another sort of undecided outcome which I'd like to resolve, which means playing on for a bit longer. The other interesting decision you make as the Germans is when to announce a withdrawal from France. Now that has a benefit to the Germans because once they've announced they're going to withdraw from France, their losses on the Hitler approval track are greatly minimised and reduced. They sort of no longer lose points for losing cities in France, and what they do lose tends to be less than it was before. So they're sort of quite keen to withdraw from France. The only issue is that when they do that, the Atlantic Wall values all disappear. So suddenly the coastline is a much more attractive target for any amphibious invasion. So you're being pulled 2 ways. You want to withdraw, so you don't lose all these points on the approval track, it also gains you an additional a replacement point every turn, which is nice to have. But then if you do it too soon, and you certainly can't do it until the Allies have really committed their second invasion, so the Allies are also, there's this kind of cat and mouse thing going on with the Allies thinking, well, there's a window of opportunity of about 5 or 6 turns to do the second invasion, and do the Allies go first opportunity and commit early, thereby allowing the Germans to announce a withdrawal from France with the benefits that ensue from that, or do they try and hang on for a few more turns to tempt the Germans to a slightly premature withdrawal from France, which will make their invasions much easier and may even open up some of the coastline which they probably wouldn't have gone for. So yeah, if you're keeping a potential invasion force in both England and in the Mediterranean box, you're keeping both options there, and there's a bit of, obviously difficult to do that when you're playing solitaire, but I can see that would be a very interesting dilemma for both sides as to when to commit the second invasion and when to commit to the withdrawal from France. So I think I will continue with this. So I'd like to see how that works out. Just about to have another dismissal actually. One of the chits that arrives is a general modal chit. So modal was sent down to try and shore up the defences in southern France, but one of the effects of a dismissal is that he will also go back into the draw pile, so he will be out of commission for a while quite soon, and the Germans have just started to pull back to try and form a line a bit further back from where they were, so you'll see that in a moment. But yeah, it's a very nice game, and essentially when you're playing it, everything you need is on a single chart, well, two charts on a single bit of paper. It's a very interesting combat system, divided between an attritional result and then a tactical result, which is influenced by the terrain in the defender's hex, and there's a chance to exploit. If you commit your armour, then each armour division only counts as half a point for the exploitation result. So if you've got say for example an E2 result after a combat, if you hadn't announced using your armour, then that would allow you to have 2 divisions exploiting. If you'd announced it, then the armour would be worth half a point each, so there could be 4 armour divisions able to exploit. The downside is that if you announce that, then the first loss that you suffer has to be taken on the armour. So yeah, all good stuff. I think there was one query I had on the withdrawal from France. It was a sort of translational thing where essentially you've got to be at least on box 4 on the approval track, and it says the marker gets moved backwards 3 spaces. Now, on first reading of that, I thought, what do they mean? I think I know what you mean, but because you're coming down from 10, 9, 8, 7, so you're coming down backwards, you think you're going back the other way. But it only really makes sense if it means it's lowered by 3. So I think there's a bit of a translational error there somewhere. And I went through all the stuff on Board Game Geek, and there was another sentence which used the word backwards, which was corrected by saying that that should be lowered. So yeah, that's what that is, which makes perfect sense, because obviously Hitler famously didn't like to give up any territory, so he's going to be, you will lose favour if you decide to vacate France and the coastline. Right, I'll do a bit of map. It's a bit dark today. We've got some storm clouds passing over. It's a bit grey, so hopefully the map will be, perhaps I'll put the light on, but hopefully there won't be too much glare off the perspex. I think we're okay without the light on. You get an annoying reflection. So the situation in Normandy is that the Allies have now broken through. That's a major breakthrough, and the Germans on their turn decided to pull back. They're probably going to try and get back to the Seine River in some semblance of order. Caen is, you can see the 452 division there with the red icon. That is the Caen square. That's still held by the Germans. Pretty tough to get to that, actually. So there is Normandy. These guys will probably go into a fortress in Brest, try and make the Allies fight for it. It's a major port, and now that the second invasion has been declared, the Germans were able to leave the coastline, and some have actually railed down to the south. That's the German dead pile, which looks pretty substantial. So the exam question is, have the Germans lost too much defending Normandy to not allow them enough to put up a good defence of Germany? And just swinging around to the invasion of South France, you can see this is Marseille and Toulon. I was in two minds whether to leave some sort of garrison there to make them fight for Marseille and Toulon, but I was really needed some troops to form a line up here, and General Model is sat there organising the defence. You get a Pluto marker with each invasion, which you can place down, and that actually has a big influence on where you can put your support markers. And if you need to replace armour, you have to be within 3 hexes of the Pluto marker, so they can be moved a hex a turn by essentially cashing in some of your support markers. So it's quite expensive, but it's what drives the invasion onwards. It's not affected by the German positions, and that just confirms that the Germans have withdrawn from the French coast. So there we are. I think I will actually continue with this, so hopefully there'll be at least one more video.